So this presentation is on the framing and for the vision of a Yuba-Feather FIRO DSS. We'll start in on what is a decision support system versus a decision support tool, and then we'll go into components of these decision support tools that can go into a decision support system to support FIRO. Come on. All right, so a decision support system is basically a system of decision support tools. A decision support tool is a kind of a standalone product on its own, representing either it could be flows, it could be precipitation, freezing levels, but a decision support system takes all those and is a collection of all those to kind of paint the overall situation and awareness for decision making. It's an attempt to paint a complete picture of the situation and the current and future conditions that decision makers will have to consider for decision making. And some of these tools here also feed into other tools, such as hydrologic models use forecasted precipitation and temperature. The products that come out of hydrologic models often go into operational models and then routed through the reservoir and then routed downstream to see what the impacts are. So there's quite a bit of dependency among all the DSTs to support the overall decision-making process. So different lead times inform different types of operations when it comes to reservoirs. So we have long-range products that are out more than 10 days. These are often the climate products. Serves primarily as a heads up for reservoir operators as it relates to precipitation and temperature. So not much is really done in that case. One other thing too in the long range is there is seasonal runoff forecast for the Yuba and the Feather basins in terms of snowmelt, and so there is some seasonal storage management due to the spring snowmelt runoff there, and that is out past 10 days. And then medium range forecasts or products run from 3 to 10 days, and this is primarily used for storage management. There isn't too dramatic of a reaction for events in this range, considering that the forecast scale is fairly low for mostly all products there. And in the short range here is the current out 3 days, and so this is flow regulation for flood control and storage management and for regulation of the downstream points. So different types of tools inform the different lead times. As I mentioned before, climate products often are the long range lead times of 15 days or more. Atmospheric products are short-term to medium range, so they inform the currents to out 10 days. Hydrologic products do the same, as often atmospheric river speed hydrologic products. And then observations is what's going on now, the kind of the reality of the situation as things develop, and can provide some short range information on what may be coming down from the upper watershed. And then the operations is short-term to medium range. So this is that response to flood control, high water events to storage management out past day 3 to 10. So we'll step through each of the types of products that can go into a decision support system to support FIRO. So with climate tools, like I mentioned before, long-range situational awareness. The longer lead times have the least amount of skill, and so as mentioned before, there's not a lot of action taken based off of what climate tools or products representing or showing. It serves as a heads up for future conditions, so something just to keep in the back of mind. For atmospheric tools, it provides that red flag for extreme precipitation events and atmospheric rivers. And then there's also multiple models, atmospheric models, so you can reference between the two, or many of them. And so if you actually see some consistency in what the models are showing, then you can have higher confidence in that event actually happening. If you see models disagreeing and not showing or representing the same thing, then more uncertainty is introduced in that event. Also, the atmospheric tools, as mentioned before, also used to force hydrologic models to create the stream flow forecasting, and then they also help with an understanding of the hydrology, and kind of paints the picture what's driving the hydrology, since it is forcing hydrologic models. So moving on to observations, it's kind of the reality and kind of the most critical foundational piece to modeling and operations. So we have watershed conditions. It informs the decision maker whether the base is wet, dry, or in between, and this can affect like the efficiency of runoff in the upper watershed. We also have stream gauges that measure the flow, so a decision maker can see that if you see increasing flows in the upper watershed, that you're going to see greater flows in terms of what's coming into the reservoir. You also have snow depth and snow water equivalent, and so the how much water is sitting in terms of snow up in the upper watershed, and how quickly that may come off in some of these warm events. So that informs spring refill and long-term or seasonal storage management. And then also you have soil moisture gauges, which also help inform the basin conditions there. And then meteorological data, such as precipitation and temperature, freezing level wind, those all help in terms of characterizing the event and informing the decision maker how much runoff may be coming into the reservoirs and side flows. And then useful in predicting watershed conditions in the hydrology. The hydrologic model, products that come out, utilizes all the previous tools and models mentioned before. It's most useful for operations as it's typically the direct input to our operational models. We have multiple sources for forecast for different means, such as the deterministic forecast, which is often used for the near-term forecast and flood operations. We have ensemble forecast for being able to assess the uncertainty around that forecast, that deterministic forecast. And then we also have seasonal forecast, so the snowmelt runoff forecast for the springtime event, so the April-July snowmelt runoff. And that's the seasonal storage management for the reservoirs. So operational tools use the forecasted hydrology to forecast future reservoir conditions and downstream flows with like the FCO and the EFO. It can provide release recommendations and also allows for testing and evaluation of release schedules. So they can, I'll talk more about the FCO later on in the next session, but it's also useful for coordinated operations for the Yuba-Feather Basin, since both reservoirs have to operate for common downstream target flows. And so, kind of wrap it up, our decision support systems that we design should be adaptive. They should evolve with future advancements in forecasting and technology. Should be able to react to real-world situations without any quickly, so such as compromised outlet works or levee issues downstream. It doesn't necessarily have to be a complete spillway failure, like we saw in 2017 with Oroville, but it could be a gate stuck in a position where you don't have full operation of spillway or outlet capacity. So those are important to capture and to be able to model and simulate during high water events. And then for research into operations, provide a process to evaluate and test research and incorporate that research into operations.